Of God whom I worship, and I'll be prepared for anything that comes.
Remembering Jimmy Carter.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
The nation's 39th president, always fighting for peace.
The battle for human rights at home and abroad is far from over.
And fighting for others at home.
Never have been on the Habitat project that we didn't get more out of it than we put into it.
Tonight, we remember former President Carter and the legacy he leaves behind.
I would like for them to connect peace and human rights to my name.
Thank you for joining us on Wish TV. I'm Tim Spears. Jimmy Carter has died at the age of 100. The Carter Center said in a statement, the former president died peacefully, surrounded by his family at his home in Plains, Georgia, where he and his wife spent most of their lives. Carter was a one-term president, going from little-known Georgia governor to world-renowned humanitarian after leaving the White House. Ivan Rodriguez has more on Carter's legacy.
From a small-town Georgia peanut farmer to President of the United States,
I, Jimmy Carter,
Jimmy Carter aspired to make government competent and compassionate.
Our social and political progress has been based on one fundamental principle: the value and importance of the individual.
After 7 years as a naval officer, he returned home to Plains, Georgia, before entering into politics, eventually being elected governor of Georgia, using the platform to speak out against racism.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over.
Becoming president in 1977, his achievements were notable, including the Camp David Peace Accords in 1978, the framework for peace between Israel and Egypt. But there were dark days too, including the Iran hostage crisis that, together with the continuing inflation at home and an energy shortage, contributed to Ronald Reagan's landslide victory in 1980. Jimmy and his wife Rosalind founded the Carter Center in 1982, promoting peace, democracy, human rights, and economic and social development all over the world. In 2002, his work earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. A devout Christian, his life was largely defined by his faith and service to others. He spent decades teaching Sunday school in the small town where he was raised and volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. The longest-lived president in American history.
I love you!
Leaves behind a legacy of love.
Well, the best thing I ever did was marrying Rosalind.
In Plains, Georgia, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
Jimmy Carter had an immense impact around the world and here in the Hoosier State. News 8's Kyla Russell spent the evening talking to experts about how he changed lives in Indiana.
Yeah, Tim, so tonight I spoke with experts across the state about how the statesman changed the way Hoosiers viewed the world.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
In 1977, Jimmy Carter walked into the White House promising he'd be a commander-in-chief marked by compassion.
Known internationally for his work in bringing peace, eradicating tropical diseases, a whole world of humanitarian relief projects.
His time in office was short, but focused on eliminating segregation, increasing public health, and broadening American interests abroad. IU law professor Jody Madeira said his work across the globe is hard to measure.
Known for a lot of peace initiatives while he was in office, the Camp David Accords, the second round of strategic arms limitation talks, Panama Canal treaties.
But back home in the Midwest, Carter's time in office came when Hoosiers were eager to know how the United States' relationship with allies and foreign adversaries could impact their day-to-day lives. At the time, the region was considered a bellwether of stability after World War II and into the 1970s. IU Indianapolis history professor and director of American Studies, Raymond Habersky, says Carter's decisions in those 4 years still impact us today.
The rise of globalization and the way that things became increasingly interconnected, especially after the Vietnam War. What happens to manufacturing in the Midwest? What happens to inflation, the price of gasoline, things like that? But all those things happened under Carter. And he was really the first president to begin to grapple with issues that affected people sort of in regions of the country that had been fairly stable.
And while each one of those topics still permeate our politics and world now, even here in Indiana, it's Carter's life after the White House that has the most impact.
President Jimmy Carter is known as a very, very pivotal figure for Habitat for Humanity. He was a huge supporter. He also traveled extensively for peace negotiations around the world. He monitored elections around the world to ensure that they were full and fair. People were not disenfranchised. And he actually had a third public health related venture, which is eliminating tropical diseases.
Each one of those endeavors was felt in the Hoosier state and continue to be.
We are bold and sort of brave as Hoosiers, and we do innovative things. And I think that is something that we have in common.
Now, both Madeira and Habursky say they plan to remind their students in the classroom that Carter's story should be an inspiration, that no person is ever too young, too old, or too anything to make a difference. I'm Kyla Russell for Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
Thanks, Kyla. President Joe Biden addressed the nation tonight, saying the U.S. has lost a remarkable leader.
We'd all do well to try to be a little more like Jimmy Carter. You know, my mom, you've heard me say this before, used to say, bravery lives in every heart, and someday it'll be summoned. Every time it was summoned, he stepped up. Every time, politically, personally, morally. And, you know, everything. The one thing I admired most about him, he thought and believed, and he really did believe this, and I do as well, that everybody deserves an even shot.
President-elect Donald Trump also saying the challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude.